presently I am a cancer survivor. I survive. I think I survive. But my life now is a testimony of not so much of my fidelity to God, but God's fidelity to me. He had been with me through thick and thin. And 4 years ago, we had a new monastery in Puerto Princesa, Palawan, Philippines. And we started that monastery at the time that I was diagnosed with cancer. And there's only one question I asked the Lord. I said, why would you start a monastery and then give me a cancer? Can it be cancer and then not the monastery, or monastery not without cancer? But then 2 years after that, I realized I have to have both. Because what I did in our monastery, the things I have accomplished, because I know I am sick, I realized that truly I was able to accomplish those things because of God. And I remember in my darkest moment, as I was struggling with cancer, I remembered the Lord really talking to me, speaking to my heart, and He said, give me your hand and I will walk you through this. And so far up to this moment, God is walking me through the many ups and downs and terrains of my life. And if you ask me, am I happy with cancer? I should say I am, because I would not choose it any other way. Because what I learned, what I learned from these 4 years with cancer, I think if I did not have cancer, I would not learn it in so fast as 4 years. But the way I understood God's love is so much that now I realize that really the very breath that we have really comes from God. And sometimes when I remember 2 years ago when I almost died, I just realized that no matter how much we love God, our faith is not just enough. Really, God's mercy is something we need. And I also felt all these years the overflowing mercy of God for me. So being a poor clay is something I really, not I love, but it's a gift of God to me. So that's my vocation. Our everyday life as a poor clay is, we know that the poor clay life is a life of prayer. But I think it's more of a life of faith. Because yes, we pray, but everything, every day, somehow it looks like it's the same every day. We get up in the morning, we pray at midnight, and then we pray in early morning, and then different times of the day, the mid-morning, midday, and mid-afternoon, and the evening prayer and the night prayer. All our days, all our hours are actually within that life of prayer. But for me, all these years, I realized that being a proclaimer is not so much of really praying, but becoming prayer itself. And I remember St. Clare, during the process of canonization, the sisters, most of the sisters described her as praying unceasingly. When I was a postulant, I thought, is it possible to pray unceasingly? But then now, after years of being a proclaimer, it is not only possible, but it is the only way to be able to really pray, not really praying, but letting the Lord pray in your heart. Our adoration of the Blessed Sacrament, we have 24 hours of adoration of the Blessed Sacrament. And every time we come to God to adore Him in the Blessed Sacrament, I realize it's not really we adoring God, but every time we come to God for adoration, God adores us. And all we do during our prayer is to open our hearts, open our minds, and let God pray in us. And if we can do that, then prayer is not so much our work, it becomes our breath, it becomes our life. And one I said about faith, because sometimes people would ask us to pray for them. But then it's not really we adoring God, but every time we come to God for adoration, God adores us. And all we do during our prayer is to open our hearts, open our minds, and let God pray in us. And if we can do that, then prayer is not so much our work, it becomes our breath, it becomes our life. And our one I said about faith, because sometimes people would ask us to pray for them. But then when we really do not know if our prayers were answered, so sometimes we wonder. And that is where faith comes. A life of faith is knowing that what you do every day, simple as it is, like sweeping the floor, cooking the meals, washing the dishes, and praying, and then our recreation or our common work. If it is done in faith, then we know that God blesses every work. And that is one thing I realized when I was a postulant. My mistress told me, the life of a proclarer is every time when we pray, we sanctify the day. We make the hours holy. And I said, how can I make the hours holy when I cannot pray even for 30 minutes and sincerely with all my heart? But then I realized, as we go through prayer every day, as we open our hearts to God in prayer, every hour that we spend is blessed because God dwells in us. And if God dwells in us, everything we touch is blessed, not because of us, but because of the indwelling of God in us. And it's blessed. And even sickness, even conflicts in community, you can see it as part of just like a meal. If it's all potatoes and tomatoes, it doesn't really taste anything. But if you put some little garlic or little spices, and then though it sometimes stings your tongue because it's hot, but it makes the food delicious. And I think conflicts in community life sometimes, when it happens, it sharpens our heart and it also expands our heart to embrace more. So for me, my life as a portrait every day, simple as it is, done in faith, is a blessing. And I know in my